Hey guys, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today's going to be a bit of a quicker video. I'm just going to be going over my top tips on where you should be applying based on your UCAT score. So before I get into the rest of the video, I'd really appreciate it if you could like, comment, subscribe, and hit that notification bell to stay up to date with all my vids. And yeah, let's get straight into the video. So I'd say probably the most common question I get asked on my DMs at the moment is where should I be applying if I got like a UCAT score of like 590 or 650, etc, etc. And my standard answer was, I don't really know, because the universities aren't very clear on their UCAT specifications and what they're looking for. The universities look at your scores holistically, so they'll take into account your academic record, they'll take into account stuff like work experience, extracurriculars, personal statement. So yeah, it can be a bit hard to describe what the UCAT cutoff is for a lot of the universities. But I'm going to try and do my best based on the research that I've done. To give you guys like a more complete image on what you should be doing based on your UCAT score. But again, just want to give a quick disclaimer before I get into it. Bear in mind that this is just based on my research, what I've sort of looked up. Nothing is an exact science. It's just all based on averages and performances across different years. Again, if you have a UCAT score that's a bit lower than the recommended university I say, doesn't mean you shouldn't apply there, but just bear in mind that you might have a bit of a risk. It's all up in the air. Like, this is something that really needs to be reformed, and I hope that's something that can be done in the next few years. But for now, this is the best attempt I've got. So I'm going to put the universities under 4 different categories. So I've got the low UCAT category, the middle UCAT category, high UCAT category, and then the universities that I can really categorize. So let's say you've got a lower UCAT score, which is probably below 600. I'd probably recommend these 3 universities, which are Leeds, Plymouth, and Cardiff. Now, the reason why I've said these 3 is because they've either got low cutoffs or they take another assessment route. So I'll go into a bit more detail. So Leeds actually look at your BMAT score. So this is a completely different aptitude test than the UCAT. So let's say you didn't do too well on your UCAT. You can actually just do the BMAT instead and then apply to Leeds. The next one is Plymouth, and the reason I put Plymouth is because they're known for having slightly lower UCAT cutoff points. I think the one this year is around 572. So if you've got a score around that range, you can still potentially get an offer. But bear in mind, just because that's a cutoff, it doesn't mean that you're definitely going to be given an interview. It just means that they will consider you, unlike other universities where they'd immediately cut you off if you are below a certain mark. Also bear in mind that Plymouth don't take the situational judgment test into consideration. And my last recommendation for a low UCAT would be Cardiff. This is because they don't really have a cutoff and they're a lot more holistic in their analysis. So moving past the low UCAT grades, let's say you've got like a middle average UCAT, which is around, let's say, 600 to 650. I'd probably recommend these 4 universities, which are Glasgow, Newcastle, Liverpool, and Birmingham. To get into the specifics, Glasgow's average UCAT cutoff last year was about 632.5. With regards to Liverpool, their mean score last year was around 623, which is quite on the low side. However, in general, they look at scores more favorably around the 650 region. It's also important to note that Liverpool do look quite heavily at your academic record, and on top of this, they instantly reject you if you get band 4 in your situational judgment test. Next up is Birmingham. Now, Birmingham is a bit of a weird one because they have this weird quartile ranking system. Their average UCAT from last year was about 636. However, just because you got that score doesn't mean that you'll definitely get an interview. One thing I do say is if you apply for Birmingham, if you've got really high predicted A-levels and really high GCSEs and like a middle to low UCAT, it's worth the risk to apply to Birmingham. Also note that Birmingham does not look at your SJT score. And the last one is Newcastle. Their average is within the 637 to 650 range of the UCAT. Bear in mind that I've got all these resources online from like Freedom of Information requests and the official university websites. I'll have the links below to all the different resources I used so that you can double check this yourself. Now, moving on from the midline and average UCATs, I'll go into the more higher UCAT screening universities. This means if you got a score of like 660 or above. The 3 universities I'd recommend are the 2 London unis, which are Queen Mary's and King's College London. And the last one would be Manchester. So with Manchester, they quite heavily weight the situation judgment section. So if you've got a band 1 or 2, you'll be heavily regarded. They also do an instant rejection for a band 4 SJT score. It doesn't mean that you should be, disheartened from applying if you've got a band 3 at SJT, but understand that you will be placed lower on the list. Next option would be Queen Mary's. Last year, their average was about 662.5. However, you should note that their weighting system is a bit different from the other universities. They very clearly state that they have an academic weighting, which means that 50% of the weighting of their applications is based on the UCAT, and the other 50% is based on your academic record. And the minimum cutoff this year is the 3rd decile. The last option is KCL. This is infamously known as a university that sort of looks at a higher UCAT. Their average score from the 2018-2019 cycle for offer holders was 669. But bear in mind that if you score lower, it doesn't mean that you won't be given an interview or you won't be given an offer. It just means that the competition is a little bit higher at King's. There's 4 unis that I haven't mentioned, and these are Sheffield, Dundee, Bristol, and Queen's Belfast. Sheffield just says on their website that they holistically assess the UCAT. Queen's says that they academically weight you alongside your UCAT. Dundee states that they don't have a minimum cutoff. And lastly, Bristol make it quite clear that the 2 things that they weight the highest are your personal statement and your UCAT score. So your UCAT is a 35% weighting and your personal statement is a 35% weighting. On top of this, they don't have a minimum cutoff for the UCAT and they don't assess your SJT score. If you want to check out my Insta post down below, I kind of have this all categorized in like a nice, post that makes it clear what the universities are higher ranked, lower ranked, ranked, all that stuff. And on top of this, I just don't want anyone to feel disheartened if they've looked at this and they feel like, oh my God, my UCAT's too low this year, I can't get into anywhere. Bear in mind that this is just a general guide. You have to take into account the fact that it is holistically assessed, and it truly is. Generally, my personal advice is that if you have got higher GCSEs and higher predicted grades, a lower UCAT can sometimes be discounted by that. So if worse comes to worse and you have like a UCAT on the lower side, but you have high GCSEs and good predictors, then you have a decent chance of getting a place at least one university in the country. With regards to people that have a low UCAT and have like a weaker academic record, so you have lower GCSEs and a lower predicted grade, if I was in your situation, I'd put heavy weighting on Leeds and Plymouth. This is because Plymouth has quite a low, boundary when it comes to applications, where they accept results, I think now from AAB at A level, and obviously they have a low UCAT cutoff. On top of this, if you have a low UCAT, Leeds doesn't look at it, so you can just apply with your BMAT instead. I really hope you guys found this video useful. Again, bear in mind, this is just a general guide. It's not an exact science. I'm just stating that so that no one, comes at me in the comments. And if you enjoyed it, please make sure that you like, comment, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you can keep up with all the content I make. And also make sure you check out my Instagram, because I've got a post there that, just shows the breakdown for all these universities in more detail. And that's about it, really. I really hope you guys enjoyed, and have a good day.